My name is Joe Stockdale, and I'm probably the oldest person here outside of his parents who knew Jim, and so I think I should say a couple of things. I was down on the faculty at Purdue University, and I think it was around, are his parents here? Brother or anything? I think it was like around 19, so I can make some mistakes. No. I think it was around 1955 that Jimmy, I just call him Jimmy, forgive me, but that's what we called him then. Jimmy came to Purdue University from some small town in Indiana. And he, of course, auditioned for shows because he was interested actually in trying to be an actor. But that was not to be. So he did get involved on crews and so forth, and he shifted from one crew to another, and finally he got into the prop crew, and then he became prop chairman and so forth. And he was absolutely terrific through those 55 and 50, am I saying this right? 56, that's right. Then we had a summer professional theater, an equity company, and they called it Barn South, incidentally. And then in 1957, we had a full LORT, L-O-R-T, League of Professional Theater, that we would do 12 weeks in the summer, 12 weeks in the fall, and 12 weeks in the spring. And Jimmy, I just appointed him as properties master because he knew every antique store in the area out at Tippecanoe. He knew the people. I noticed when he had parties and so forth that Jimmy would often look around, particularly with well-to-do people who had Victorian sofas and so forth, and kind of put that in his mind. And he was, as you've all said, a very unassuming person, but he was damn good as a property person. And at the first show that he worked in that LORT Theater Company was James Earl Jones and Of Mice and Men, and everyone thought he was just great. It was a full equity company. And then I remember the next big show that he worked was, my mind is going, but I mean, he did a lot of really first-rate work there. And at the end of the spring season, oh, I know, he also did Anne Revere, who was Academy Award, Tony Award winner in Long Day's Journey into Night. That does have some complicated furniture in that new London home. And Jimmy was right on in all of it. He just did a terrific job. After that spring season, I said that really, Wayne was there, of course, by that time. And Wayne and I said, you ought to go to the barn for a summer. That's the acid test. And so we both called Jack and talked to him and said that that was the day. No one came to the barn unless Jack said to. And Jack always had people recommend, because that's the way he did it. And so Jimmy got high recommendations from both Wayne and myself and came up here. That would be in 1968. And when he finished that, I thought probably he was going to come back to Purdue, but he called me or wrote me or maybe I was up here and we talked. And he said he was more interested in going into the professional theater than any more of the academic thing. And I thought, well, a smart kid. And so I wrote or called Zelda Fitzchandler, who was the artistic director of the Arena Theater in Washington, D.C., and said we had a terrific prop person. And so Jimmy went there. She didn't hire him as the prop master, but he worked his way into that position. That was a season that the Arena did Indians by Kopet, and it needed a horse. And Jimmy built the horse. Stacy Keach was the actor in it. And when it went to Broadway from the Arena, he said he had to have the horse go too. And so Jimmy's horse went to Broadway. We had a series of horses. Right today, there are about several horses on Broadway. Then he went back to Equus, and then he went back to Indians, the horse that Jimmy built. And so I just wanted to say those things. He was absolutely terrific and all that. And all of it, he had a really wonderful sense of humor and a good eye for symbolism. I remember when at the barn, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum was done. I remember the person came in on stage like Domina. You know Domina, Domina, Domina? She had in her hand here, she carried a purse. This was in Rome, of course. And that purse had a kind of bag on it. It was flesh-colored. And there were 2 tennis balls at different levels in it. And she carried that in, Domina, which I thought was symbolic, metaphoric, and wonderful. So anyway, he was a terrific person. I didn't see Jimmy very much when he was at the barn. We always greeted when I ever came to the barn. And I also visited him once in Bronson Hospital. And I met someone from this organization there. I can't remember the names or anything, but anyway, he was a great guy and a great prop person with a wonderful sense of humor and a good human person.
I am a Barney. I have been since 1981, and that was when I first met Jimmy Knox. He was quite a presence, you know, he was formidable. I think of him for some reason in a big jumpsuit and a pith helmet, which you just don't see every day. And he would appear at first to be very serious and very focused on what he was doing. And then he would say something that would just knock your socks off, the funniest thing you've heard, and come out with this crazy Cheshire Cat grin. He really had just swallowed that canary, you know. And, this is my 6th show here since that year as an apprentice. It's my first without Jimmy. The last time I saw him, he asked me about my kids. He was always interested in my family, my wife, and my children. He was with me in Barefoot in the Park when my wife brought our little boy Connor on stage when he was nursing. The big joke was that she would actually get bigger throughout the course of the show because she was nursing Connor. And then he was also here when I did Sylvia, and our daughter Kendall had then been born. And he loved them, and he just got great joy out of both of them. The last time I saw him, he asked me about them. I showed him pictures of Connor, now 22, Kendall now 19. And we talked about how we were both getting older. On stage, I always felt safe with Jimmy. The last show I did here, Shenandoah, I handled some firearms on stage, firing blanks, and he always took care of me. He took care of all of us and made sure that not only did we have the right tool for the job, but that we would be safe in using it. I have a lot of respect for a man who does his job well. And in some ways, even more respect for a man who does his job quietly and well, and doesn't flaunt the fact that he does it well, and that was Jimmy. Somebody said to me, it might have been you, Brandon, a couple weeks ago, that we may never know all of the things that Jimmy did for this theater, because he did so much for this theater, but he did it in his quiet, measured way. And I have a lot of respect for that. We had a lot of long conversations back when I was apprentice, and every time we would come back to this theater, and I will miss his friendship terribly. He was a good man.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm a second-year apprentice here at the barn, so I wanted to tell you guys kind of what us Barneys, how we feel about Jimmy. So Jimmy was like literally the person who knew the most out of anyone here about what we were doing. Like, if we ever had any questions, if we ever had any advice that we just needed to get answered, just to get advice from him, we knew we could go to him, and he would give us the most, I guess, in detailed explanation of something. So I feel that now that he's no longer with us, we have huge shoes to fill. So I just wanted to say that I'm so proud of Amy and of Carter and Natalie and David for doing all the properties. My friend Kristen and I, we were on properties in 2009, and we know how hard it is and what huge shoes we're filling. So that I know he's so proud of you guys for trying your hardest, and that he's looking down being like, now you gotta memorize that prop room because that's how he would tell us how to find the properties. He'd say, well, it's you walk in, you go about 3 steps, you look to your left, there's a gold box, and sure enough, my favorite memory, I guess, is in 2009, Kristen and I got to go to the air zoo to pick up props for Tommy. And so he's like, go explore if you'd like. And so we did, and he's like, come back in an hour. Well, about an hour and a half later, because we got really excited, he had us paged over the intercom like, Kristen and Jenna, come to the front. Grandpa Jimmy like. So I just remember at that moment really feeling like he was family and one of the greatest friends that we could all have, and I know that we will miss him so much and think about him every day. So.
He was a property master. Those 2 little rascal heads there is one of the first things that he created, and actually we've been using them in Man of La Mancha. Now, it was built in 1970. There is probably one of the greatest things that he had done at the barn was there's a show called Little Shop of Horrors, where it has not just one man-eating plant, it has 4, I believe. And the first time we did Little Shop was Jimmy, I think he literally spent a solid week awake. And we didn't hear, after Little Shop opened, we didn't hear from him for about 2 days. But he created the Audreys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, and really did a superb job. We remounted it several years ago. I believe it was in 2001, maybe 2, that, and I said, Jimmy, you know, MTI has Audrey. Let me rent it, you know. And he was like, you know, kind of like, he understood, because the Audrey that he created, the big one, didn't exist anymore. It'd been rented out and had actually toured more miles than a lot of us have. But the one we got from MTI sucked. So it was one of those things that it's like, Jimmy, you know, he goes, I know. Jimmy, you know how I felt about the MTV's Audrey. But anyways, it was one of his favorite shows.
As you know, Jimmy's parents aren't here. They're elderly, they couldn't make it up. Jimmy's brothers also could not make it up due to time constraints and whatnot. A couple weeks ago, Jimmy's younger brother Mike and his wife came up to go through Jimmy's house and, you know, to collect heirlooms and mementos and things like that. And it kind of shocked him to learn how much Jimmy did and how important he was to all of us that are here, the community at large. He was surprised by that. It was like meeting a person he'd never met before. I have a feeling that their family was somewhat distant. So it's been eye-opening for him. And his younger Mike Knox submitted a poem that reflects that feeling. And I'm going to hopefully read it correctly for him. It's called The Man I Didn't Know. He did not put on airs or otherwise portray himself to be anything other than gay. But in '64, such things weren't told. Despite peer pressure, he resisted the mold, yet it was never spoken, never declared, and so much of his life never was shared. As I talk to his friends and read of his press, his character reveals all that was best. Who thought him a fighter defending a cause, or courageous in the face of unjust laws? Who knew him as mentor, refined in his art, and shared the passion he held in his heart? Who thought him a brother in which to confide, or knew him as friend as the years went by? I am heartened that he had all this to share in a refuge with friends who show that they care. What is history to you comes to me slow, the loss of a man I'm just beginning to know. The entire Knox family appreciates the kindness, friendship, and compassion extended to them during this time of sorrow. And he would also like to add that if the measure of a man is through the quality of his friends, Jim has lived well. You big purple man.